AITA for keeping my distance after my family cut me off over a lie and now want back in? I'm 32 now, but back then, I was 24, still living with my parents while I finished my engineering degree and worked part-time at a local auto shop. My younger brother, Liam, was 22 and had been dating a girl named Chloe for about a year and a half. She was the type of person who seemed flawless on the surface, attractive, intelligent, and from a well-respected family. My parents were completely charmed by her. They were always saying how fortunate Liam was and what a perfect daughter-in-law she would be. Personally, I never warmed up to her. Something about her always felt off. She was sweet and polite around my parents, but I'd caught her being incredibly rude to servers and cashiers when she thought no one else was looking. She also had a way of making small, backhanded comments about me that she'd pass off as jokes. Things like, "Oh, you're still living at home? When are you going to get your life together like Liam?" All with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Liam was utterly captivated by her. He started canceling plans with his friends, skipping family events, and basically restructuring his entire life to fit hers. It was difficult to see, but he was my brother, so I figured he would eventually see it for himself. The day my world fell apart started out completely normal. I was scheduled to help Liam move some furniture from his old apartment to a new one. We had agreed to meet there around 3 p.m. to get started. However, around 1:30 p.m., he sent me a text asking if I could get there a bit earlier. His car was making a strange noise, and he had to take it to the shop. He said he might be about an hour late, but Chloe would be at the apartment to let me in so we could begin packing some of the smaller items. I told him it was no problem. I stopped for a coffee on my way over, thinking I could at least start organizing his books and other miscellaneous things. Liam had given me a spare key a few months prior, so I didn't think anything of it. I arrived at his apartment building around 1:45 p.m. and went up to the third floor. The hallway was silent. Most residents were likely at work on a Tuesday afternoon. As I approached his door, I was about to knock when I heard voices inside. I assumed Chloe was either on the phone or watching television. I used my key, unlocked the door, and called out, "Hey, it's me," so I wouldn't startle her. That's when I saw them. Chloe was pressed against the living room wall, and Tyler was right there with her, his hands all over her. They were kissing intensely, completely lost in the moment. Tyler, my brother's best friend since college, the guy who had been at every one of our family barbecues and birthday parties for the last 3 years. I just snapped. "Are you serious?" They sprang apart. The look on Chloe's face shifted from passion to pure panic in a heartbeat. Tyler turned pale when he saw me. For a moment, there was just dead silence. I was beyond furious. Seriously? In my brother's apartment? I yelled, looking from one to the other. Still, no response. Then, Chloe started to cry. She pushed Tyler away and backed into a corner, sobbing, "Please, don't tell him," over and over again. Tyler stepped between us, taking a strange, protective stance. "Dude, you need to get out of here," he said to me. "Just leave." As if I was the one who didn't belong there. "Liam is my brother. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" I shot back. That's when Chloe's panic escalated. She was hyperventilating, repeating phrases like, "He's going to tell him everything," and "Liam will never forgive me." I tried to calm her down, but she was becoming more and more hysterical, and Tyler just kept telling me to leave. Finally, I said fine and walked out. I decided I would call Liam and let him deal with it. I got in my car, trying to figure out the best way to tell him his girlfriend was cheating on him. It was going to crush him, but he had to know. He deserved better than to be made a fool of. That evening, however, my phone began ringing off the hook. It was Liam. He was screaming, "What did you do to Chloe?" The conversation was a complete nightmare. He was so enraged I could barely make out his words. Apparently, right after I left, Chloe had called him, hysterical, and claimed that I had assaulted her in his home. According to her version, she was there alone when I arrived to help with the move, and I had made an unwanted advance on her. Tyler had backed up her story, claiming he had walked in on the situation, tried to intervene, and said I had been too aggressive and threatened them both. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Liam, that is absolutely insane. I walked in on them kissing. She's cheating on you with Tyler." "Shut up," he yelled. "You're a liar. Chloe would never do that to me. She loves me. You're just jealous because you can't find a girl like her." The jealousy accusation stung because it was so completely baseless. I had never been envious of their relationship. If anything, I felt sorry for him because I saw how much she manipulated him. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but he wouldn't listen. He told me Chloe was already speaking with the police. The police? I felt like I was in an alternate reality. Liam, please, listen to me. I'm your brother. Why would I lie about something like this? Because you've always hated Chloe, he replied. You couldn't stand to see me happy. Well, congratulations. You've managed to ruin the best thing that ever happened to me. Then he hung up. I just stood there, my hands trembling, trying to process what had just occurred. 20 minutes ago, I was worried about how to break the news of his girlfriend's infidelity to my brother. Now, I was being painted as a monster. I immediately drove to my parents' house. They were in the kitchen, and they already knew. Liam had called them before I had the chance. My mom was in tears, and my dad was looking at me with a coldness I had never seen before. Is it true, he asked. What? That I caught Chloe cheating, and she's lying to cover her tracks? Yes, that part is true. My mom let out a cry as if I had just confessed to something heinous. How could you do that to your brother? To that sweet girl? I attempted to explain the reality of the situation, but they were no more willing to listen than Liam was. They had already made up their minds. They would rather believe their son was capable of a terrible act than accept that their perfect future daughter-in-law was unfaithful. The hours that followed were surreal. Liam brought Chloe over to the house. She played the role of the victim flawlessly. She would burst into tears the moment anyone looked at her and would physically flinch whenever I entered the room. It was clear she had rehearsed the part of a trauma survivor and was delivering an Oscar-worthy performance. Liam refused to even look at me. When I tried to talk to him, he told me to stay away from his girlfriend. My own brother was treating me like a predator in our family home. The worst part was watching my parents comfort Chloe. My mom was making her tea, telling her how brave she was. My dad was patting Liam on the back, telling him he was a good man for standing by his girlfriend. All the while, I was sitting right there, their actual son, and they were treating me like I was a monster. No one asked for my side of the story. No one seemed to consider that their son and brother might be innocent. Their judgment was already passed. Later that night, Liam cornered me in the hallway just outside my bedroom. I had never seen him so cold, so filled with a frightening rage. If you go near Chloe again, you and I are going to have a serious problem, he told me. The little brother I had taught how to throw a football was speaking to me like I was his worst enemy. Liam, she is lying. I swear on my life, she's lying. I caught her with Tyler, and she made this whole thing up to save herself. He grabbed me by the collar and shoved me against the wall. My own brother looked at me with an expression that said he wanted to hurt me. You're still going to lie, even now, he spat. After what you did to her. You're sick, man. You are really sick. I pushed him off me. Fine. Don't believe me. But when you finally learn the truth, don't come crying to me. The only truth here is that my brother is a monster, he replied. And I will never, ever forgive you. 2 days later, the police arrived at our house with a warrant for my arrest. I had been expecting it. Chloe had filed a formal complaint, and Tyler was corroborating her story. But being put in handcuffs in front of my neighbors was a level of humiliation I can't possibly describe. The detective assigned to the case, an older man, looked at me as if I was guilty from the moment he saw me. During the interrogation, he asked leading questions like, was this planned, or was it a spur-of-the-moment thing? As if his only goal was to get me to confess to something I hadn't done. He had the weary demeanor of someone who had heard every excuse and believed none of them. I told him the truth, that I had discovered Chloe's affair with Tyler and that she was lying to protect herself. He replied that was what every guy in my position said. Apparently, claiming the accuser was lying was such a common defense that it only made me seem more suspicious in his eyes. My parents kept asking me if I was certain about what I had seen, as if I might be confused or too scared to admit what I'd done. The only person who believed me was my friend Marcus. He told me he'd always thought Chloe was shady. The investigation dragged on for 6 long weeks. 6 weeks of my life were put on hold while the police interviewed people and collected what little evidence there was. The atmosphere at home had become unbearable. Liam and Chloe were always there, and she never broke character. She would have what looked like panic attacks whenever I was in the same room, rushing into my parents' arms and crying about her trauma. The performance was constant, even when she probably thought no one was watching. Liam stayed by her side like a loyal bodyguard, shooting me hateful glares as if I were a dangerous animal that needed to be watched. My parents were completely taken in. They would console Chloe and tell her how sorry they were that their son could have done this to her. I felt like a ghost in my own house. The worst part was that no one wanted to hear my version of events. Every time I tried to explain what really happened, they would cut me off, saying I was re-traumatizing the victim. I was guilty until proven innocent, and even then, my innocence wasn't guaranteed. My university suspended me pending the outcome of the case. My boss fired me for inappropriate conduct. My friends stopped calling and texting. In our small town, the rumors spread like a plague. I couldn't go anywhere without feeling people staring, without hearing the whispers. Marcus was the only one who stuck by me. He would come over to visit and try to get my mind off things, which would infuriate Liam to the point where he would leave the room the moment Marcus arrived. Marcus kept telling me he knew I was innocent and that the truth would come out eventually. Sometimes I wondered if he truly believed it or was just trying to be a good friend, but his support was the only thing keeping me afloat. About a month into the investigation, the detective called me in for another interview. He informed me that they had examined Tyler's statement and found several inconsistencies. Apparently, Tyler had changed his story twice about what he had seen, and his timeline of events didn't align with Chloe's. When you're lying, it's difficult to keep all the details straight, especially under the pressure of a police interview. The detective also mentioned they had requested Chloe's phone records and found some interesting messages. He wouldn't specify what they contained, but his entire demeanor toward me had shifted. He started asking different kinds of questions, like, "Do you have any proof of the affair you claim you witnessed?" Unfortunately, there were no security cameras in the hallway of Liam's apartment building. I had no evidence beyond what I saw with my own eyes, and that clearly wasn't enough. 2 weeks later, the charges were dropped. The detective called to inform me that they had found no evidence to support Chloe's allegations and, in fact, had found several pieces of information that contradicted her story. He told me they would not be pursuing the case any further. The wave of relief that washed over me was immense, but it was mixed with a bitter anger. It had taken them 6 weeks to arrive at a conclusion that should have been obvious from the start. You would think that would have been the end of it, but it wasn't. When I told my parents the charges were dropped, their reaction was, just because they couldn't prove it doesn't mean it didn't happen. They said they were disappointed in the justice system and that they knew what they believed to be true. It was as if they would rather be right than accept that their son was innocent. Liam was even worse. He claimed the dropped charges meant nothing. The mental gymnastics they performed were astounding. Instead of admitting they might have been wrong, they doubled down on their conviction that I was guilty. But the most twisted part was their unwavering loyalty to Chloe. Even after her lie had been exposed, even after the police investigation showed her story didn't add up, my family continued to believe her. She still came to family dinners. Liam still treated her like a princess. My parents still viewed her as their future daughter-in-law. And I was the one who was no longer welcome in my own home. My parents said I could stay until I figured out my next steps, but it was clear they wanted me gone. Liam couldn't even stand to be in the same room with me. The house I had lived in for 24 years had become a cold, hostile, and foreign place. The final blow came about 2 weeks after the case was closed. I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. They were saying they were worried about having me in the house and that they had to prioritize Chloe's comfort. They were literally choosing my brother's lying girlfriend over their own son. The conversation was brutal. They were debating whether they should ask me to leave for good because my presence was making Chloe uncomfortable. That night, I packed everything I owned into my car. I left a note on the kitchen counter saying I was leaving town and that they shouldn't try to find me. I drove straight to Marcus's house and told him I was done. Done with my family, done with that town, and done trying to prove my innocence to people who had already convicted me. Marcus tried to talk me out of it, saying I should stay and fight, but my will to fight was gone. Sometimes you have to recognize when a battle is lost, even if walking away means losing everything you thought was important. I knew that even if I fought, the damage was irreversible, and I had no hard proof. I knew I no longer had a place in my own family. So, I started driving north without any real plan, just the overwhelming need to put as much distance as possible between myself and my past. I ended up in Montreal, simply because it was the first major city I came to after crossing the border. And honestly, the distance felt right. I figured if I was going to disappear, I might as well do it properly. The street signs in French and the different currency made it feel like another world entirely, which was exactly what I needed. Those first few months were awful. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a rough part of town, taking whatever cash-paying construction jobs I could find. My French was terrible, so I mostly worked alongside other English speakers who were just as desperate as I was. That construction crew became a sort of surrogate family for a while, a group of guys who didn't ask about your past and only judged you on your ability to handle a hammer and show up on time. The hardest part was the profound loneliness. For the first time in my life, I was completely on my own. No family, no childhood friends, no support system. It was just me, in a foreign country, trying to piece my life back together from nothing. Some nights, I would sit in that small apartment, eating instant noodles and wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The work was physically draining, but it was also therapeutic. There's something about building things with your hands that helps you find order in your own mind when everything else has fallen apart. I specialized in framing and drywall, work that demanded precision and focus. The physical exhaustion helped me sleep at night, and the satisfaction of watching a building take shape gave me a sense of purpose when all hope seemed lost. After about 6 months, I legally changed my name. It cost nearly everything I had saved, but I needed to shed that old identity completely. Every time I saw my old name on a document, it was a painful reminder of everything that had happened. The new name felt like putting on a fresh set of clothes after being dragged through the mud. Marcus stayed in touch, and his calls probably saved my sanity. He would call me every couple of weeks and eventually started visiting a few times a year. It was a lifeline to have at least one person from my old life who still believed in me. He kept me updated on what was happening back home, though most of the time, I didn't want to know. Hearing about my family moving on without me felt like picking at a wound that wouldn't heal. Apparently, Liam and Chloe became inseparable after I left. He proposed to her with some grand gesture in the park where they had their first date. My parents were ecstatic, talking endlessly about wedding plans and future grandchildren. Liam got a promotion and settled into a comfortable, predictable life. From the outside, it looked like a perfect story, except for the son and brother they had cast aside to make it happen. Marcus never said it outright, but I could tell he thought my family was twisted for choosing Chloe over me. He would occasionally comment on how they never asked about me, as if it didn't bother them at all not knowing where I was. But he was loyal to me, not to them, so he kept most of his opinions to himself. He did mention that some of our mutual friends had started asking questions about my sudden disappearance, but Liam and my parents just told everyone I had moved away for a job opportunity. After about a year, I really started to get my life back on track. I enrolled in a university program to finish my engineering degree, using my new identity and my status as a Canadian resident. Getting back into academics after months of manual labor was tough, but it felt good to use my brain again. I made a few acquaintances, though nothing too deep. Just people to grab a beer with or watch a hockey game. My professional life improved as well. I got a job with a construction firm that specialized in commercial buildings. The pay was good, and the work was fulfilling. I started dating again around my second year there, though trust was still a major issue for me. But slowly, I began to open up, find a routine, move into a decent apartment, and build a life with a job I didn't hate, surrounded by people who just knew me as a regular guy. All of it helped me slowly regain my self-worth. The real turning point came during my third year there, when I met April in a coffee shop near campus. She was a nursing student, originally from Vancouver, and we connected instantly. She was patient with my emotional baggage and never pushed me to talk about things I wasn't ready to discuss. We took things slow. I told her I had a complicated past, but didn't offer any details. She never pressed for more, which, in turn, made me trust her even more. By the time I was finally ready to tell her everything, we had been together for almost a year, and she knew me well enough to know that I was not capable of the things I had been accused of. April changed everything for me. She helped me remember the person I was before my life was turned upside down. Her family was the complete opposite of mine. She had grown up in a stable, loving home with parents who communicated with their children and worked through problems together instead of taking sides. When she talked about her childhood, it was like hearing about life on another planet. Our relationship became serious quickly after I finally opened up to her. She was the first person besides Marcus to hear the entire story and say, "It is absolutely insane that your family believed that girl over you." Having someone else validate that, no, I wasn't crazy, that the whole situation was absurd, did wonders for my mental health. When April took me to Vancouver to meet her family, they welcomed me as if I had always been one of them. Her dad taught me how to fish on the Fraser River. Her mom shared family recipes that had been passed down for generations. No one pried into my past or made me feel like I had to justify my presence. They simply accepted that I was important to April, and that was all that mattered to them. April's parents had been married for 30 years and were still genuinely in love with each other. After we had been together for about 2 years, April became pregnant. We were having twins, a boy and a girl, which was both terrifying and wonderful news. I remember thinking that these children would never have to experience the pain of being abandoned by their own family. The moment I held them in my arms for the first time, everything clicked into place. I knew I would do anything to protect them, that I would never let anyone hurt them the way I had been hurt. These kids were going to grow up knowing that their father would always believe them, always support them, and always be on their side. They are 4 years old now and are my entire world. April's family stepped up in an incredible way. Her parents took early retirement and moved to Montreal to be closer to their grandkids, helping us constantly with childcare. Her dad helped me buy a house in a good neighborhood with great schools by co-signing the mortgage. My credit history wasn't strong enough on my own yet. Her mom practically lived with us for the first month after the twins were born, doing laundry, cooking meals, and teaching us how to manage 2 infants at once. I was promoted to site manager at my company, which came with a better salary and more flexible hours. This promotion allowed me to spend more time with my kids while still advancing in my career. April finished her nursing degree and got a job at the local children's hospital, which was perfect for her because she has a deep understanding of what families go through. We were truly living a dream. We had good jobs, a beautiful home, healthy children, and a loving family. The kids grew up believing they had only one set of grandparents, and to them, that was completely normal. I had told my in-laws the truth about my biological family, and they made it clear that, as far as they were concerned, I was their son now. They embraced their roles as grandparents wholeheartedly, showing up for every birthday, school play, and soccer game. My kids call them Grandma and Grandpa, and are spoiled rotten, just as grandchildren should be. Marcus continued to visit about twice a year and became an honorary uncle to the kids. They adore him, and he loves being able to shower them with gifts before handing them back to us when they get fussy. He still gave me updates about my old life, though by that point, I preferred not to hear anything. Liam and Chloe had a large, extravagant wedding, which my parents apparently paid for. They bought a house just 3 blocks from our childhood home, close enough for Chloe to continue playing the part of the perfect daughter-in-law. Liam was working at the same engineering firm where my dad had worked before he retired. It was as if he was living the life I was supposed to have, with the woman who had destroyed my chance at living it. Marcus told me my parents never brought up my name, never asked about me. It was as though I had never existed. They had constructed an alternate reality where their only son was Liam, their daughter-in-law was Chloe, and I had been completely erased from the family history. To be honest, by that point, it didn't hurt as much as it used to. I had a real family that cared for me, kids who thought I was a superhero because I could fix their broken toys and make pancakes on Saturday mornings. I had a life built on truth, not on lies. 8 years after my life fell apart, and after 5 years of peaceful, happy living with April and the twins, the universe decided it was time for another test. It was a Saturday morning. I was helping my son with his math homework while April and our daughter were out grocery shopping. A completely ordinary morning. The doorbell rang, and I figured it was a neighbor or a package delivery. Before I could stop him, my son ran to open the door. I heard him talking to someone, but I couldn't make out the words. Then he came back into the living room, looking confused. "Dad, there's an old man at the door, and he says he's your father." A knot formed in my stomach. I walked to the front door, and there, standing on my porch, was my father. He looked older, more tired than I remembered, but it was definitely him. He was wearing an expensive-looking winter coat that seemed too big for him, as if he had lost weight recently. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. The man who had disowned me 8 years ago was standing in front of my house like a ghost from a nightmare. "Hello, son," he said, his voice quiet. His voice hadn't changed, but there was a broken quality to it now. I slammed the door in his face so hard the entire frame vibrated. All of those old emotions, the betrayal, the anger, the hurt, came flooding back as if it had all happened yesterday. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding in my ears. My dad kept knocking and calling out my name, my old name, which sounded foreign to me after all these years. "Please, son, open the door. Let me talk to you. I know you're angry, but please, just let me explain." There was a desperation in his voice I had never heard before. Just then, April pulled into the driveway with our daughter. She saw the man at the door and asked me who he was. I explained the situation as briefly as I could. April knew the whole story, of course, but she never imagined a member of my biological family would actually show up on our doorstep. She was furious on my behalf, but told me to take my time and hear him out while she took care of the kids. She took them upstairs to their room to give us some privacy. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and let my father inside. He looked around our home, his eyes lingering on the family photos on the wall, the kids' drawings taped to the refrigerator, all the small signs of a happy life. There were pictures from birthdays, vacations, and school events, years of memories that he had no part in. "You've built a good life," he said, and his voice held a note of genuine admiration. "No thanks to you," I replied coldly. "What do you want?" He sank onto the sofa, looking every bit of his 73 years. His hair was completely gray, and his face was etched with lines I didn't recognize. "I need to tell you something. Something we just found out last month." What he told me next was both a vindication and a fresh wound. Apparently, Liam and Chloe's marriage was not the fairy tale everyone thought it was. About 6 months ago, Liam had started noticing strange behavior from Chloe. She was becoming secretive with her phone, making excuses to go out by herself, and staying late at work for projects that never seemed to materialize. Liam decided to do some investigating before confronting her. One evening, when she claimed to be at her book club, he followed her. He found her car parked outside a downtown restaurant. He waited in his own car for 3 hours until she came out of the restaurant with Tyler. But he didn't confront them then. Instead, he started paying close attention to everything: her schedule, her excuses, her behavior. He began documenting their affair. For weeks, he followed them, taking photos and videos of their meetings. He discovered that she was still involved with Tyler, who was now married with children of his own. They were meeting at hotels and in Tyler's office after hours. In reality, their affair had never stopped. They had just gotten better at hiding it. But what made my blood run cold was what came next. This affair had been going on for years, not just months. It had started before I first caught them and had continued throughout their entire marriage. Liam found credit card statements showing regular hotel bookings for their entire life together, as well as evidence that they were seeing each other even before the wedding. She had been living a double life from the very beginning. He also found text messages between them, and the content was devastating. They talked about a future together, about leaving their respective spouses, and even about what they would do if their past ever came to light. The worst part was a discovery that during their marriage, Chloe had become pregnant by Tyler and had a secret abortion, never telling Liam because she feared the child wasn't his. The messages showed them laughing about Liam's naivety and how easily they had fooled everyone. In those messages, Chloe also expressed her fear that the family would find out the truth about what they had done 8 years ago. She was terrified that I would somehow reappear one day and prove my innocence, exposing their lie. They had even discussed contingency plans for what to do if I ever came back, and tried to tell everyone the truth. When Liam finally confronted her with all the evidence, she completely broke down and confessed everything. She admitted that she and Tyler had been involved long before she even met Liam, that they had never truly ended things, and that on the day I caught them, she had panicked and fabricated the assault story to protect herself. She admitted that she had made it all up. She had married Liam while still being in love with Tyler. She had allowed my family to be destroyed to protect her secret, and she was planning to leave Liam for Tyler as soon as his divorce was finalized, so they could finally be together openly. My father learned all of this when Liam came to him for advice about the divorce. Liam was completely shattered. He couldn't understand how he had been so blind, how he had wasted years of his life on a woman who had never loved him, and how he had destroyed his relationship with his own brother for someone who had been lying from the very start. Liam is devastated, my father told me. He knows he ruined his relationship with you for a liar. He wants to call you, to apologize, but he has no idea how to find you. He's been asking everyone if they know where you went, but you just vanished. I sat there, trying to process it all. 8 years too late, my family had finally discovered the truth. 8 years after they threw me out like I was nothing, they finally realized I had been telling the truth all along. This vindication should have felt like a relief, but after all this time, it just felt empty. And what about you? I asked my father. What's your excuse for believing her over your own son? He looked down at the floor, and I saw tears welling in his eyes. I don't have one. We were wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. We let that girl manipulate us until she tore our family apart, and we have been living with the consequences of that for years. Really? I shot back. Because from what Marcus told me, you all seemed pretty content with your choice. You had your perfect daughter-in-law, your fairy tale wedding, your happy little family. You just erased me from the picture and moved on with your lives as if I never existed. We tried to, he admitted, his voice cracking. But not a single day has gone by that I haven't thought about you. I have always wondered where you were, if you were okay, if you could ever forgive us. Your mother, she's not the same person. She's been on antidepressants for years. She cries every Christmas, every birthday. Because her son isn't there. She's kept your room exactly as you left it, as if she's waiting for you to come home. Her son is there, I replied sharply. You just chose to believe I was a monster instead of listening to what I had to say. We talked for about 2 hours. He told me how Liam's world had crumbled, how my mother was destroyed by the realization of what they had put me through, and how they were all desperately trying to find me to make amends. He told me they had hired a private investigator who eventually tracked me down in Montreal. I told him about my life, about my wife, my children, my career, and my in-laws who had welcomed me as their own son. I showed him pictures of the grandchildren he would never know. I told him about the family traditions we had created, the life I had built from the ground up. I want to fix this, he said, his voice pleading. I know I can't undo what we did, but maybe we can find a way to move forward. Maybe we can be a family again. There is no moving forward, I told him, my voice firm. You made your choice 8 years ago. You chose to believe a stranger's lie over your own son. You threw me away like I was worthless, and now you want me to forgive and forget just because you finally saw the truth. I told him about the years of therapy I had needed, the trust issues that still lingered, and the complete annihilation of my faith and family loyalty. I explained how I had rebuilt my life with people who genuinely loved me and how his sudden appearance was disrupting the peace I had worked so hard to find. I am so sorry, he said, openly crying now. I am sorry for everything. We were terrible parents. You deserved so much better. Your apologies are 8 years too late, I said. I have a family now. A family that chooses me every single day, that believes in me, that would never cast me aside based on someone else's lies. You can go back home with your guilt and your apologies to the family you chose to protect. I walked him to the door and told him never to contact me or my family again. He tried to hand me a piece of paper with Liam's phone number on it, saying that Liam also wanted to apologize and was hoping to reconnect. I took the paper, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash can by the door, making sure he saw me do it. After he left, I sat down on the sofa and cried for the first time in years. Not out of sadness, but out of a profound sense of release. The truth was finally out. My biological family knew they were wrong, and I realized that I no longer cared. I had everything I needed right here, in this house, with my wife, my kids, and the family that chose me. April came downstairs after putting the kids to bed and found me sitting there. Are you okay? How do you feel? She asked, taking my hand. Like I can finally close that chapter for good, I replied. They know the truth now, but it doesn't change anything. You are my family. You and the kids are all that matters. Marcus called later that evening to check on me. Apparently, my father had contacted him to get my address, and Marcus had been debating whether or not to warn me. I told him what my father had said, and he let out a short, bitter laugh. Took them long enough to figure it out, he said. Too bad they lost you in the process. Their loss, I replied. And for the first time in 8 years, I truly meant it. Many have asked if I plan to get back in touch with Liam. The answer is no. He had 8 years to question Chloe's story, or at the very least, to have some doubt. Instead, he married her and lived his life while I was forced to rebuild mine from nothing. Some bridges are meant to stay burned, and I'm okay with that. As for my kids, they know I'm from the US and that I have family there that I don't speak to. When they're old enough, I'll tell them the whole story. For now, they're just happy children with parents who love them and grandparents who spoil them. And that is exactly how I intend to keep it. Comment. After a story like this one, I just want to share a thought with all of you. Your worth is never defined by those who refuse to see it. Sometimes the most courageous act is walking away to protect your own peace. True healing often begins when you stop trying to fix what was broken and start building something new for yourself. The family you choose, and that chooses you back, can offer a love that is unconditional and profound. Remember to be the person for someone else that you needed during your own difficult times. You are not obligated to reopen doors that you had to close for your own well-being. An apology might explain the past, but it does not automatically earn a place in your future. Always choose the path that leads to your own genuine happiness and stability. I hope you always find the strength to choose yourself. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.